Doug Yones, the head of Exchange Traded Products, is here at the New York Stock Exchange, and he's joining us now on NYSE TV Live to talk more about this. Now, Doug, good morning. It's a great morning to join us on the show.
It's always great to be here. I love the show. Long time watcher, maybe only second time appearance, but thank you for having me. It's an exciting day. It's an exciting week that continues really right out of the gate at the New York Stock Exchange from the first of the year.
Yeah, and I actually want to talk more about on the exchanges side, right? Tell us exactly about all of this that we just talked about. What's happening right now?
Yeah, it's an interesting time, and you brought it up in the earlier part, right? As an industry, we have been working on this for over a decade. And when I say working on this, there's a series, anytime there's new innovation in the ETF industry, anytime we're working on something that hasn't been done before, we need to go through a series of regulatory filings and regulatory approvals.
Yeah.
And in this case, but it's not alone, it took us a really long time to get the SEC comfortable, to get all the different parties comfortable, to the point where they were approving the multiple filings that are required. And it all sort of culminated, I would say maybe about 3-4 months ago. As you mentioned, that court case really started to move things along. At that point, we became re-engaged with the SEC, and we worked through a series of steps where ultimately they approved the rule filings last week, which allowed for immediate effectiveness of these ETFs. We're now trading all Bitcoin-related ETFs here at the New York Stock Exchange. We started with the very first futures-based ETFs on Bitcoin. Those have been out now for over 2 years and work really well, by the way.
Yeah.
And then we've now added spot Bitcoin to the quiver, if you will. And so investors, depending on which one they want to choose from, they're all available for trading here at the New York Stock Exchange.
So let's talk about more of the significance of this, right? This is hugely significant, right, for the Bitcoin community, but specifically the NYSE. Why is this so significant?
Yeah, I think it's a good point, right? So the Bitcoin community itself, maybe I would almost argue, or at least think about, the fact that for them, they've always had access to Bitcoin. They've been very comfortable with the idea of wallets and off-exchange trading and very large bid-ask spreads. If you sort of look at the marketplaces, we wouldn't define them as exchanges. They're not regulated exchanges. But marketplaces have been trading Bitcoin for a very long time. If you're in the crypto community and you're comfortable with that and you understand the difference between wallets and frozen versus not frozen, but the reality is over the last few years, a lot of these firms, we've seen these marketplaces dry up. We've seen them close down. We've seen investors have difficulty accessing those wallets.
Yeah.
There is a certain level of comfort, I think, for some investors who want to be in that space to be able to own Bitcoin through an ETF.
Yeah.
Something that's on exchange, it's regulated, it's available through my brokerage account, your brokerage account. It's a little easier. And so ETFs are doing today or this week what they've always done, which is they're providing access. The underlying investments, regardless of Bitcoin or any other security, those are personal decisions to be made with an investment advisor. Our role is to make sure there's liquidity.
Yeah.
And if somebody does choose to invest in an ETF, they do choose to invest, whether it's a Bitcoin ETF or any other ETF. We're trading over 3,000 ETFs here at the New York Stock Exchange. Why is it a big deal for us? We want to make sure the liquidity partners are there.
Yeah.
So we have dozens of liquidity providers. We're working with them to make sure bid-ask spreads are very tight. When the opening auction, we're not open yet this morning, when that happens, there's lots of liquidity from any demand that built up overnight. And so we're making sure our part of the E and ETF, the exchange, is running so smoothly that people just don't think about it.
And I want to talk more about the whole trading process. We are about a week into trading spot Bitcoin ETFs. How much activity is the exchange currently seeing?
Yeah, we're seeing quite a bit. It's probably pent-up demand, as we said, that needs to work itself out.
Yeah.
We're seeing brand new products. We're also seeing brand new advertising campaigns. We're sort of sitting in the epicenter here. We see the latest news. It can take a while for the reporters to write stories, for it to get all the way across newspapers and how everybody receives their news. So it will take a while. We also are aware that platforms, sometimes broker-dealers, when you log into your account, not every security is there right away. It can take time for compliance approvals, et cetera. So some of that is still moving through, but I would say we're in at least top 10 or top 20 asset classes in terms of total trading within the first week of going live.
And I want to talk more about NYSE ARCA, right? So 3 spot Bitcoin ETFs are trading there. I mean, for our viewers who might not know, explain what NYSE ARCA is.
Yeah, it's interesting. We sort of live and breathe this, and we don't tend to think about it. The reality is, the New York Stock Exchange, we run a number of different exchanges here. Obviously, we have the floor behind us, right? That's the premier listing venue for companies around the world.
Yeah.
And ETFs. We actually started listing ETFs on the floor. In fact, 9 transferred down to the floor last week. So it's an exciting place. However, that's sort of the premier venue. We combine both electronic trading with human trading. We also run the world's largest ETF exchange. It's called NYSE ARCA. Now, NYSE ARCA we've had since really the beginning of ETFs, and that's where the majority of ETFs list and trade in the US. And so we get into the distinctions. I think at the end of the day, for an investor who's investing, they're probably not focusing heavily on where is it traded. They want to know, is the liquidity there? Do bid-ask spreads look really good? Am I going to be able to trade in, trade out without any concerns? And so we're focused on all those pieces.
And I want to talk more about, obviously we kicked off 2024. What sort of trends are you seeing right now impact this space?
Yeah, ETFs have been pretty interesting. So the first trend clearly is active management. So a stock picker, someone behind the scenes picking and choosing what's in the investment versus just following an index like we're used to, like the ICE 500 or the S&P 500, right? Those are sort of what we would call benchmark indexes, newspaper index, the Dow Jones Industrial Average.
Yeah.
They've been around for a very long time. Active management has been around just as long. Somebody actually picking securities. If you look across the ETF landscape, it's the fastest growing area in terms of number of listings. It's also had tremendous cash flow over the last 3 years, and over 70% of all actively managed ETFs last year had cash inflow.
Okay.
So the first trend clearly is people, individuals, advisors, institutions, they're looking for the best stock pickers and bond pickers to run their ETFs. And so that would be number one. The second is mutual fund to ETF conversion. We're all used to mutual funds. We've had mutual funds for many years. We're starting to see for the last 2 years, about $70 billion has converted directly from mutual funds straight into ETFs.
Wow.
Why? Because people like ETFs a little bit more.
Yeah.
They're easily traded. They're easily accessible. They tend to be lower cost. And so that's been a big deal. And the third, especially around ETFs, they're growing so quickly, people want to be educated. So a lot of the people don't realize, but we spun off a website for education. It's etfcentral.com.
Oh.
It's free. You can find everything about ETFs. You can learn. You can actually become a certified ETF advisor on
Very
ETF
cool.
Central.
Wow.
And you can type into the screener anything you're looking for. So someone's watching and they want to learn about Bitcoin, they can just type Bitcoin in the screener. They want to learn about AI. If you're following Davos, a lot of conversation on AI. Type in AI, you'll get every AI ETF, a lot of information there. So it's all available,
cool.
provided by the New York Stock Exchange, etfcentral.com.
Yes, awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me, Doug.
Thanks for having me this morning.
No, absolutely.